Coming up on Locked On Now NFL, Week 14 featured a ton of good games, a lot of them with playoff implications. This is Locked On Now NFL.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now, local experts on the biggest stories throughout the NFL. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Now, to start the show, Tom Brady played the team he's beaten more than any other team in the NFL. And I guess some things don't change. That's our biggest game.
The biggest game.
TB12 took down the Bills for the 33rd time in his NFL career. That's more wins than against any other team that he's played. This one came in dramatic fashion in overtime as well. Locked On BUCS has more on the record-setting day for the GOAT.
James Yarko here from the Locked On Bucs podcast, talking about the Buccaneers' 33-27 overtime win against the Buffalo Bills, a game that was far more interesting than it needed to be when the Buccaneers held a 24-3 halftime lead, just to see the Buffalo Bills outscore them 24-3 in the second half and send it to overtime. But the hero in this one was Brashad Perryman, who has been filling in for Antonio Brown, who gets a 58-yard catch and run for the touchdown, marking Tom Brady's 700th career touchdown pass, including the postseason. Brady would throw for over 360 yards and have 3 total touchdowns, while Leonard Fournette once again gets the job done, over 100 rushing yards, added almost 20 more in receiving. The Buccaneers escape by the skin of their teeth and have an opportunity to clinch the NFC South crown for the first time since 2007 if they win in primetime against the New Orleans Saints this coming week. For more on this win and all things Buccaneers, check out my co-host David Harrison and I on the Locked On Bucs podcast, 5 days a week, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Coming up, Alvin Kamara returned for the Saints, and he ran all over the Jets in East Rutherford, New Jersey. This is Locked On NFL. Today's edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar available. During the holiday season, we all want something chocolatey, something that tastes great, and that's why Built Bar is perfect. It's made with 100% real chocolate, but it's low in calorie, low carbs, low fat, even low sugar, but it's high in protein, so it's good for you as well as tasting good. It's perfect as a stocking stuffer. They come in a ton of different flavors, so you can check that out as well on their website. If you head over there to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, you get 15% off your order. Again, remember to use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Now NFL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Alvin Kamara made his return for the Saints on Sunday after an injury. He jumped right back into things where he left off. And the Saints offense is our best performance.
The best performance.
Hold up.
Saints welcomed Alvin Kamara back with open arms and helped the Saints get a win as well on Sunday. Kamara showed no signs of rust, looked like his old self out there. Locked On Saints tells us how the Saints kept pace in the hunt for a wild card spot.
The New Orleans Saints losing streak is finally over. I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. The Saints bringing an end to their 5-game skid with a win in New Jersey, 30-9 over the New York Jets. And this victory effectively brought to you by the return of Alvin Kamara, who by himself outran the New York Jets as a team. 120 rushing yards for Alvin Kamara, only 78 for the New York Jets, which is also a testament to the New Orleans Saints defense, who helped to control the clock and control this game from opening kickoff to that final stop on the 1 yard line by Zach Wilson, almost getting the one and only touchdown for the New York Jets. But 30-9, New Orleans Saints now improved to 6-7, tying them up at the bottom of the NFC playoff race. Can the New Orleans Saints keep their playoff hopes alive with 4 games remaining in the season? We'll discuss that and much more on our Victory Monday episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget to check it out wherever you get your podcast, including on YouTube as well, free and available everywhere. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Cowboys brought along their benches and their A game to the nation's capital on Sunday afternoon. Locked On Cowboys has more on what the division win means for Dallas.
Cowboys beat the Washington football team 27-20 on the road, but they have got a lot to work on. Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and despite a handed victory, which is a lot wider margin of victory despite what the score said, the Cowboys have a ton to work on as their offense continued to sputter throughout the game. Their defense, on the other hand, was quite extraordinary. They only allowed 8 points in the first 3 quarters of this entire football game. They were able to keep the Washington football team out of the end zone for most of the game. They were able to keep them from getting up to the first yard marker on third downs. The Cowboys defense basically was able to stop Washington from doing much, and at one point the Cowboys had more points than the Washington football team had yards. So that bodes well for the Dallas defense that has been developing as the season has gone on. But as we turn our eyes to the offense, they have got to find a way to get back in sync. Dak Prescott has got to find a way to get back to his regular season form earlier in the season if this Cowboys team wants to do anything in the playoffs. Make sure you're checking out the Locked On Cowboys podcast and the Locked On NFL podcast for all your needs. And until next time, we will see you then.
Washington football team almost pulled off an impressive comeback, but ended up coming up just short. Locked On Washington football team has a recap for us.
What's going on, Washington football team fans? I'm Chris Russell, back from FedEx Field, where the Washington football team suffered a disappointing defeat, 27-20 to the first place Dallas Cowboys. Why? Well, 29 total net yards of offense in the first half, no points. 4 turnovers, 2 in the first half, 2 in the second half. Every time Washington did something positive, they seemed to ruin their momentum throughout the game with either a penalty, a sack, or a turnover, and they did plenty of all of that. It was really a terrible performance overall by the offense, despite scoring ultimately 20 points. 7 of those points came off of a Cole Holcomb pick 6 of Dak Prescott, which certainly closed the gap a little bit more. So again, really not much out of the offense as a whole. And that's the reason why they're 6-7. This one, not on the defense, really by any stretch, as the defense continues to play well and give Washington a chance. Next Sunday, it's off to Philadelphia, where they will contend with Ryan Kerrigan and the Eagles for the first time this year at 6-7. For more analysis on the loss, listen to David Harrison and myself on the full-length Locked On Washington Football Team podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Thanks for watching Locked On Now.
Justin Herbert and the Chargers rolled all over the Giants in LA. Locked On Chargers breaks down the decisive win.
The Chargers took care of business against a bad team. What's up, guys? This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, coming to you after the Chargers' dominant 37-21 win over the New York Giants in a game where Justin Herbert was great again. 275 passing yards and 8.9 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 133.1 in this one, highlighted by the throw of the day, a 59-yard dime to Jalen Guyton, who now has 40-plus yard touchdowns in back-to-back games. Rookie Josh Palmer also came through in a big way in the absence of star wide receiver Keenan Allen, but the defense was dominant as well for most of this game. They did give up a couple of garbage time touchdowns, but I think you saw what you wanted from them going up against a Mike Glennon-led offense. But the Chargers, peaking at the right time, win back-to-back games for the first time since Week 5, moved to 8-5 on the season, heading into a huge Thursday night football matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that could decide the division. For all of the latest in our full game breakdown, make sure to check out the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and follow the show wherever you get your podcast from. Your team every day.
On the other side, the G-men continue to struggle without their starting quarterback. Locked On Giants has more on this downward spiral for New York.
New week, new embarrassment, as the New York Giants were no competition for for the Los Angeles Chargers in their Week 14 game. Hi, everybody. This is Patricia Traina, host of the Locked On Giants podcast. And the Giants were dominated by the Los Angeles Chargers 37-21 in a game that at one point the Chargers held a 30-7 advantage going into the fourth quarter after scoring on 7 of their first 9 possessions of the game. The Giants, for the second week in a row, had no takeaways in the game. But on offense, it was more of the same as backup quarterback Mike Lennon went 17 of 36, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Running back Saquon Barkley, who everybody thought might be the focus of this week's offensive game plan, considering the Chargers' run defense was ranked 31st coming into this week's game, rushed for 64 yards on 16 carries. The rushing yardage, his highest total since returning from a Week 5 ankle injury. He also added 3 receptions for 31 yards and had a receiving touchdown. The Giants' loss assures them of their 5th straight losing season and their 8th in their last 9 seasons. For more on this game and all things New York Giants, be sure to keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
The Tennessee Titans bounced back after 2 straight losses with a home win over a division opponent. Now, Jacksonville is not exactly good, but a win is a win, and our Locked On Titans host is just happy to see that.
Tyler Rowland here, host of the Locked On Titans podcast, with my instant reaction to the Tennessee Titans 20-0 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans needed this when the Titans break a 2-game losing streak after their bye week and get some positive momentum as they head towards the final push of the season. In this game, the Titans offense was a tad inconsistent, but the Titans defense was absolutely dominant. The Titans get their first shutout at home since 2000, led by the Titans defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Harold Landry, even Derek Roberson had great contributions. So a big-time win for the Titans in a game they should have won against what looks like the worst team in the NFL. The Titans' magic number for clinching the playoffs is now 2. They need any combination of Titans wins or Colts losses that add up to 2 to secure the AFC South.
For Jacksonville, it doesn't get much uglier. They didn't put any points on the board, and their quarterback threw 4 picks. Locked On Jaguars is fed up with this team and coaching staff after another embarrassing weekend.
Hey, this is Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. Another disastrous performance today by Urban Meyer's Jacksonville Jaguars. They lose 20-0 to the rival Tennessee Titans on the road, and now everybody's just flat out calling for him to go. I don't know if Shad Khan's going to pull the trigger, but this seemed like a very, very fireable game. Trevor Lawrence had 4 interceptions, and James Robinson had, depending on who you look at, either 6 or 8 yards rushing. This team is not together. Wide receivers actually ran into each other doing one of their routes. I could have done that. It's like me and my wife out there running a route, and they look like rank amateurs. This is a disastrous football team. It's probably the worst Jaguars team I've ever seen, including the one that went 1-15 just last year.
The Denver Broncos stopped the Detroit Lions from getting hot after their 1 win so far this season, and the Broncos had 21 unanswered points in the second half to get the win. Locked On Broncos recaps the victory that keeps Denver in the thick of it in the AFC playoff picture.
The Denver Broncos dominated the Detroit Lions on a day where Demaryius Thomas was honored by the Broncos organization at Empower Field at Mile High. This is Cody Rourke, host of Lockdown Broncos, and this is your Lockdown Broncos quick post-game report. The Broncos, they improved to 7-6 on the season after a dominant victory against the Detroit Lions, powered by Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, both running backs combining for 2 touchdowns each, as the Broncos go for over 180 yards on the ground in winning fashion. We talk about why this is the way for the Denver Broncos offense the rest of the season and how they could get to a playoff berth as a wild card if they maintain it. Not to mention, how did the Denver Broncos honor Demaryius Thomas, who passed away last week? We break that down on today's brand new episode, Lockdown Broncos, free and available everywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube, Locked On Broncos.
That's going to do it for us. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single day. For more on the National Football League and your team, make sure you checked out Locked On NFL and your team's Locked On podcast as well. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.